Hey there, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. You're listening to No Bed of Roses. Welcome back, everyone, to today's episode of No Bed of Roses. Today, I get to reconnect with a great old friend of mine, Kevin Hall, and I hope you enjoy listening in on our conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Here's Kevin. That's what they're doing. Here it is. We didn't plan it. We're doing it on the fly.
And we're doing it.
That's as complicated as the show is. It's a show about nothing.
I think we just made ourselves serious and series regulars on a what do they call it? A recurring role.
On
You're No Bed of Roses.
No Bed of Roses. Yeah.
You're No Bed of Roses. Well, I picture roses and they got thorns. So what?
How about that? That's a Jewish mother and a Jewish son. And if I'm No Bed of Roses, that means I'm good. Yeah. And she's looking at me like, what are you on? Because I just started doing it. And
she's like, you might be upstairs smoking something.
Yeah, you smoking something? I wish I was. I wish I was smoking something. Perhaps no one will ever listen but us. But
it's the archives. It's the Library of Congress. We'll look back at this one day and marvel
and get nauseous. Look back at this and go, what? This is what happens when you put technology in the hands of idiots. This is what
and have a global pandemic.
In a pandemic. Here's an example class.
What should we do today? Let's record ourselves.
It's a mass communication class. This is exactly what you should not do.
This is what you should
refrain from getting involved in. This is if a friend calls you up, says he has technology, and just don't answer.
Say yes. Just say yes.
Just, you know what? Keep going to Walmart and get extra envelopes.
Just haul ass up and down State Street. Just floor it in your hybrid
you actually
shovel pod.
State Street.
We do. Yeah.
Which seems right.
Yeah. Do you guys have State Street?
I think we may somewhere, but we have, we've got Old Town, which is the model for Main Street USA at Disneyland. That's a little bit. No, true story. True story.
Is that right?
That's true story. Oh, wow. You could find a similar Old Town probably. You probably have one in Boise, but yeah, apparently Disney saw this, and this was the inspiration for his Old Town Main Street USA. Yeah,
we're kidding.
Yeah.
So what's the name of the town itself?
Fort Collins. Fort Collins,
so
but Old Town is the downtown, the original downtown, non-curated for the most part. Local mom and pops, of course, they're all hanging on by their skin of their teeth right now. Let me ask you: are things completely insane? Because you're we talked about it, you're in a bit more of a maybe an extreme situation, and I don't know. Maybe you're not because Fort Collins, for all intent and purpose, is purple blue, but right outside. Crimson red.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think you said that was a similar thing in Idaho.
Yeah,
in Boise.
Boise proper, and ironically enough, Boise being the state capital, or maybe that's not ironic. I don't know, but it's quite blue. But the rest of the state is super duper red.
Yeah.
And it's not a very big population here either. So when people the day after the day the election was called, there were a bunch of demonstrations and sort of, peaceful demonstrations with people with signs and flags and things like that at our Capitol building. But a lot of people travel to the Capitol from other areas that aren't from the greater Boise area.
That was Stop the Steal, right? That were just pro-Trump, but it didn't get crazy.
Not too crazy, really. There's pre-election, there were, a lot of, lots of trucks and vehicles and convoys with flags and American flags and Trump flags and things like that were buzzing all over the place. And from time to time, you would have larger gatherings on the steps of the Capitol, but nothing super wacky and out of control or that felt like we were in any sort of danger necessarily. I'm slightly nervous when I see a 20-year-old, skinny blonde kid with camo pants and a assault rifle over his shoulder walking around with a flag going, that's, whatever he's celebrating his Second Amendment rights or whatever his position is. But it's just, stuff like that's a little odd to see, since it's the country here and it's Idaho, and a big argument that I think a lot of folks feel like they're making is for their Second Amendment rights. And
right.
Other than that, no, I don't think it's been out of control or wild. I mean, no. How about there? Is it
pretty mellow? I mean, we realized on our street we're 50-50. Kristen was very adamant about having her Nope sign and her Black Lives Matter sign, and then got her direct from China Biden-Harris sign. And I said, this is not. She goes, well, they wanted $100 for 10 cents. This is for the campaign. You ordered from China. And it was pretty, it was pretty mellow here. I had a deal at the hotel, Kevin, and we may get cut off. If we get cut off, it's because my phone died, and then that'll be it. Lights out.
And that's a wrap.
A year ago, there was a guy who was walking through the hotel with a shirt on that said Trump 2020, fuck your feelings. And so I told my team, this guy's walking through the hotel, right? It's filled with families. And I told my team, I said, don't serve that guy if he comes back in here. And I told my partner at the hotel who runs the room side, I said, hey, we're not going to serve this guy. And I feel if anybody, what my politics are, but we can't do this. I said, yeah, we can. I said, I don't care. That could say Bernie Sanders 2020, fuck your feelings. I wouldn't feed that guy either. You shouldn't have that. What are you going to tell your 7-year-old daughter that's sitting at the table next to? I said, it's not okay. I said, I don't care about the politics. It's just the language on that shirt. And we got into this whole thing, Kevin, about it.
Well, isn't it private property? I mean, it's you totally reserve the right to refuse service to anyone.
We totally can. It's totally private property. And there was a woman, some MILF, and like moms, hot blonde moms for Trump. Yeah, on her football jersey. Okay, fine. That's fine. It didn't say fuck your feelings, right?
Right.
And so that was my issue with that.
It seems to be what has been so promoted, just the aggressive sort of angle on just about everything.
Everything's so hot. Everything's so angry. Nobody can have a conversation. And that's fine if you want to champion one candidate over another. I mean, this conversation's old and dusty already about the disintegration of civil discourse. And so it was really just that. I said, hey man, you can walk around here with a shirt that says go fuck yourself on it. I mean, you can't. Yeah. I mean, you're not at some nightclub. We got families here, and that's not okay. And why should some families sit there because this guy is wearing this shirt and it's his feelings, and they've got they've got grandma and the kids there, and they have to compensate for that. My two most intense negative encounters with people in the hotel, in a restaurant, in the major markets, where it was not in New York, was not in LA, was not in Austin, was here in Fort Collins with people who grew up in Fort Collins, that it went to DEFCON 1 at Fort Collins after all those years in the business, so I said, so don't be.
It's saying something. I think that really, that points to something that we've been talking a lot about, and especially with the kids, and I am very grateful all the time for the fact that we've been fortunate and able to travel a bit with the kids. And I've got a little sister that lives in New York, and got family still in California, and another little sister that lives in London. And so, the kids at their young age have had some exposure in traveling and internationally. And it seems that such a recurring situation where you have people that are unfortunately very limited in terms of their exposure. They're just sort of isolated in a bubble where that fearfulness is manifested into hostility and aggressive behavior and violence. And it sort of tends to go hand in hand with people that are super limited in terms of exposure outside of their small town where they've grown up, and they've just sort of been fed the same Kool-Aid for generation after generation. And it's not all of that either. I was actually talking to Gracie about this the other day, where there's a contingent of folks, you don't have to be angry and hostile and aggressive just because you're in a small town and you've never left it. I mean, you could be just as curious and just as loving and interested and open. But it's odd and unexplainable in terms of the human condition as to why there's such a majority of people who behave that way, that tend to be so limited in their exposure.
Well, I think because everybody learned it's okay. When you have a president who's just saying that behavior, your fears coming up to the surface and you not having any kind of governor on them, no pun intended, because of his amazing respect for governors, it's okay. That's okay. Just let it fly, man. Say whatever you're going to say. I think that's part of that. This was a gay couple that accused me of being homophobic. And I just thought, am I in the freaking Twilight Zone? It's going to be a gay couple in Fort Collins that's going to tell me with my rainbow staff and my background that I'm homophobic. And then, these guys wrote on the ticket, go suck a cock, Jeff, and loosen up. And, they were so nasty, Kevin. And I just thought, wow, it took coming to the Midwest to experience that kind of night. And we're from here. We're from here. And I just thought, okay. I think so many people just felt like they were given permission. And if you know that you could just go for the jugular, then you're not going to dance. You're not going to finesse anything. You're just going to shut down. And not to say that that's always going to be the way, but I think that's what I observed. The quick move to meanness. To me, it was tangible. It was clear. Of course, the thing is, going back to what you were saying, if you're in a city, Chris and I talk about this all the time, and I think there are statistics that reflect this, that when you've got wide open space and nobody really on top of you, it's your world, right? And governments stay out of it. But when you've got 167 different languages being spoken and everybody's on top of everybody, it's a different sense of community.
If you look at these goofy color-coded maps of our country and like the blues and the reds of where all the votes are, and like in the urban areas and in the cosmopolitan areas, in the multicultural areas, in the areas that are just, sort of a cross-section of planet Earth, that's where you have what tend to be sort of these blue areas or these purple areas. But I think this is, not scientific at all. It's total just bro science, with the example of the most visible person on the planet. Whoever's the president of the United States, of course, they're most visible, the most audible, the most famous for the time that they're in office. And like you said, people that follow that example tend to have been given permission to behave that way. And if they've already sort of been, I guess, preordained, or, they already have sort of a element within their genetic makeup that would cause them to behave that way, it's been released. I think if anything, this has sort of put everything under a microscope or a magnifying glass. And I don't think it's created anything. I think it just sort of exposed what was already there, which is frightening to me personally, because, there's so much of this conversation that's been brought up about like white privilege. And like, I have always sort of resisted the idea of labels, and I don't want to be labeled. I don't want to be X, Y, or Z, whether that be a religious label or a societal label or whatever, and has brought to mind that I have, I guess, the convenience of sort of saying, hey, I don't want to label, but like, let's say you're a black guy or a black gal that lives in this society, in our country. I mean, they don't have the convenience to say, I don't want to label, I mean, did you watch SNL, the Dave Chappelle? He had, I'm just paraphrasing it, but it was really cool. Like, I mean, if you like Dave Chappelle's comedy,
Chappelle.
It's super poignant and eloquent and just
Love
like
Chappelle.
razor surgical with where everything is put together. And like something along the lines of Dave Chappelle saying this, I know what this feels like. If you feel disenfranchised, if you feel upset about how the outcome of this election went, and you feel angry, I know how you feel. Believe me. And then he had sort of just in the way that he's able to do like no other. He said, I want everybody now to go out and do something kind for a black person that doesn't deserve it. He said, because for so long, all sorts of unkind, evil things were done to black people that for no reason, that didn't deserve it. Find a drug dealer that's not committing to, not improving his neighborhood whatsoever, selling crack on the corner in the ghetto, and drive by and just give him an ice cream cone. And it was just like, it was strangely uncomfortably, the way he puts it is so articulate and so eloquent and so personal.
Remember when that night you got busted and you went to jail in LA? And I'm saying remember that night because I'm assuming there was one, but I don't know. There may have been other nights, but there was one that I knew of. But I remember you sharing with me that, when you went in, you had to quickly hook up with the group that you identified with that was going to protect you and see you through the next 24, 48, 72 hours.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And whether you're going to be with the Aryan Brotherhood or you're going to be with...
Which is a very small contingent in there, by the way.
Which is a small contingent. Or you were going to be with... I don't know if it was the Mexican mafia at that point.
Big contingent.
Right? Big contingent.
Large crowd,
or you know, whether it was like, I don't know how the Crips and the Bloods were represented or what, you know, what the deal was there.
I had a Calvin and Hobbes comic tucked into my waistband that the cops, when they're searching you, doing the cavity search and all that stuff, they never found. And so I happened to be in this processing section of county where this kid, black kid, I was looking at my Calvin and Hobbes comic, and he's like, oh man, he's like, I love Calvin and Hobbes. And so I kind of bonded with him. I bonded with a lot of people that I think...
We're running out of juice here, but this is a great story. They do a cavity search. Of course, you wouldn't find a full-size comic book. How could you? Because if Chris Walken could hide a watch up his ass, you're hiding...
this watch.
You're hiding a Calvin and Hobbes. And the fact that Calvin and Hobbes saved your white ass in the joint is extraordinary.
It was wild because it was like there were points where speaking Spanish saved me. There was points where, because I heard people like "Mátalo," and I'm like, oh, U-turn. I'm not going not that direction. I'm going the other way now. And,
¿Qué es esto, Mátalo? ¿Qué es Mátalo?
Like get him or kill him or whack him or whatever.
Yeah, that's not good.
Because there was a point where
yo tengo Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin and Hobbes.
Calvin and Hobbes, está bien. No te preocupes.
Calvin y Hobbes. Aquí. Yo tengo.
But that same little dude that I met, who was probably about my age, about my size, you know, I don't know what he was in for. You know, we kind of bonded and we became pals because, you know, you're hanging out with people for extended periods of time as you're waiting to go from place to place to place. And it turned out that when I was in this big section of, it's like, imagine a gymnasium that you're locked into with all of these metal bunk beds in it, like filling up an entire like high school gymnasium.
Sure.
And it's all spread out, like all the black guys over here, all the Mexican guys are over here, all the, you know, the tweaker white dudes, all 7 of them are over in the corner over there, you know, and literally there are masses of humanity. And I was by myself and I had lost my shoes, and this old Asian dude came up to me and dropped a pair of shower slippers in front of me, and he's like, better than nothing. So I was like, right on. So I have some shower slippers now, and I'm cruising around the place in my orange jumpsuit. And this Latino kid walks up to me from across the room, and he's like, hey, check it out. See those dudes over there? And I said, yeah. And he goes, they're about to fuck you up for your shoes. And I said, oh, okay. So what am I supposed to do? And he's like, well, if you give them to me, everything will be cool. And I'll just take it to them and everything will be all right. And I was like, all right, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to get killed over some shoes, so go ahead. And he left. And then a black dude who saw that all go down, he's like, man, you shouldn't have let them do that. And I'm like, what the hell? You know, what am I going to do? And he's like, come with me. He's like, you need a toothbrush, you need some food, you hungry? And I'm like, sure. As I'm cruising, somehow I rejoin with the Calvin and Hobbes dude. And he remembered me, I remembered him. And he's like, yo, man, he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, you know, just getting my shower slippers stolen and my life threatened. And, you know, and he's like, yeah, man, fuck them. And he's like, come with us. So I'm walking and I have to go by the dudes. And literally, like, you know, when the dude has like the teardrop tattoo coming down 18th Street tattooed on his neck and like La Raza, El Trece and all that shit. And like,
West Side,
all of that. And like, I'm going by and they're calling me. They're like, hey, güero, hey. And they're like wanting me to come over to them. And I didn't. And so that whole thing, because the dudes that I was with were like, yo, man, fuck them. Stick with us. Keep going. Don't listen to them. Because I was like kind of slowing down as those dudes that took my shower slippers were like, hey, güero, come over here. Come over here. I'm like sort of at a confused moment of like, do I go over here? Do I go with these dudes who are like taking me with them over to their crew? And so I kind of went with those guys that were like, man, fuck them. Just come with us. And so I ignored the Latino crowd over there and I kept going. And then they were like, oh, no, you didn't, Ese. Fuck that. Now you're fucked. You know, so I kept on going and rolled up to the crowd of dudes who were like hanging out over in their section on all their bunk beds and like super, most of them are like yoked, jailhouse, super like huge dudes spending a lot of time lifting weights and the whole thing. And one dude, it was very kind and you know, they had toothbrush, they had food, they had all this stuff because everybody kind of keeps all this stuff as sort of like currency.
It's concierge services.
Concierge service.
Yeah.
And I remember that there was kind of like, I don't know, the main kind of alpha dude of all of them, who was kind of more chilled out and like kind of leaning back at the top of his bunk, kind of against the wall and up there, and kind of they were all waiting for him to talk. And the little Calvin and Hobbes dude was like, "Hey, this is my buddy. This is Kevin. And like, we're gonna help him out. We're gonna give him some stuff." And I had $2 because I had sold my burritos a while back, like in a previous little sort of changeover. And so I with my $2, I got a toothbrush and I think like a Snickers, I think. And so this dude though, he gave me a lecture, big, like 6'4", super swole, like jailhouse weights, buff, humongous dude with, and he's like, listen, he's like, where are you from? And I was like where in town? Or he's like, no, he's like, what county? And he's like, what county are you from? And I'm like originally, well, I moved here from LA. He's like, no, what county? I'm like, oh, like Santa Clara County is where I'm from. Like that's in Palo Alto. He's like,
does that mean anything?
I'm like digging for what, where I'm from. And so I get to county and he's like, oh yeah, I've been locked up in Santa Clara County. Yeah. All right. And like he recognized that from being like in Northern California all the way down to Southern California. He's like, "What you in for?" And so I had learned the acronym of what I had been arrested for, and I said GTA, like 'cause that's like the cool way to say it. And he's like, "Oh man, you stealing cars?" And I was like, "No, it's a motorcycle." And he's like, "Nah, man." He's like, "Listen, you too small to be up in here." And he like grabbed my arm, and he's like, "Look at you, man." He's like, even that right there. He's like, "You don't let nobody touch you like that." He's like, "You don't know me." He's like, "You too small to be up in here. Listen, you got to call somebody. You get on the phone right now. You got to call somebody and apologize. And you got to go and you got to get yourself a job like delivering pizzas or something because you do not belong up in here." And like, he gave me a full lecture about get out of here, go apologize, go say sorry, get yourself on the right path. And I never forgot it.
This is a true story.
Yeah. And, a bunch of other stuff happened after that, but like I hung out with them for a while. And in that situation, they're constantly moving you to keep you uncomfortable and to keep you not sleeping very long and to keep you kind of exhausted in this kind of like hazy state of like feeling kind of semi-hungover, semi-high, semi-like kind of on edge all the time. So you never sleep. Unfortunately, I got moved because they're like, "Yo, man, stick with us. You'll be all right." And so I'm like, oh, finally, like after like day 3, I finally have some respite, of like relief where I'm not going to be killed or knifed or like having my shoe stolen or whatever. Then, lo and behold, 45 minutes later, they're moving everybody and they're like, "All right, everybody, we're moving, we're relocating, sound off with your last 4, like your booking number or whatever." And like, I got moved again. And so I didn't have those guys hanging around with me anymore. And I was sort of like stuck with the next little round of people that you're moved into a smaller facility or a larger facility or whatever. But not long thereafter I got released. They released me on my own recognizance. They said that you can return to court, but I got stuck in the system. I basically it was if you imagine like a pinball kind of getting stuck and bounced around. I should have been released out right then and there, like at booking, but something happened. I don't know what specifically, but I got stuck in there for like 4 days.
I thought it was something like 3 days.
Yeah, it was like coming into day 5 and I got processed out.
God.
And it's a labyrinth. I mean, it's a huge whatever 20 style. It was the big downtown county lockup in downtown LA.
Parker Center.
There are escalators in there like they have at the mall that go up and down, and like you're going to like, I mean, you hear about it in hip hop songs, like 1800, whatever that refers to, but there's like in big like Roman numeral 1800 sort of, you're going up these escalators to all of these different blocks and rooms and gymnasiums and places. I mean, you could get stuck in there super easy, which I did. Luckily I got processed out because friends on outside were I'm like, "Get me the fuck out of here." Yeah, but there were a lot of wild experiences. That was one of many, but it was super wild.
What a tale you tell with no battery left. Tales of brave Kevy. Crazy. I kind of remember it. I hope I didn't drag anything up there that is going to haunt you tonight, but
you give me like post-traumatic stress disorder. Fine. And I'll be sort of twitching over here.
Kristen Lee's going, "What are you doing with shower slippers and a toothbrush, Kevin?" And is that a Calvin and Hobbes comic in your back
Is it a
pocket?
Calvin? It's in your waistband? What is that? Why are you keeping
You have
it in
something
your
you want to
underwear?
tell me?
There's a lot more. I mean, there's wonderful material that I've used in like my stand-up bits, and there's like
Save it,
good
man.
writing.
Save
like,
it for the next
God.
episode.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
there's
And the one after
It's
that.
wild.
They don't make them like this anymore. Thank God. You got one Kevin Hall. That's it. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation between my good friend Kevin Hall and myself. We had a lot of fun doing it, and there'll definitely be more of those in the near future. This was the first attempt to do a call-in, and I think for the most part it worked out pretty well. Stay safe and tune in again to No Bed of Roses. You'll find us wherever fine podcasts are available. Talk to you soon. Bye.